Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Agriculture in a Nutshell. I'm Dillon Brush, and I'm bringing you guys another one of these behind the scenes kind of episodes today where it's just kind of you and I talking. And so today I kind of wanted to talk about, or I thought it would be interesting to talk about how I have interacted with ag throughout like school and like my schooling in high school and currently right now I go to MJC, which is a junior college in Modesto, and my ag interactions over there. So I figured it might be interesting to some of you guys to hear kind of my own personal experiences, trials and tribulations with all this ag stuff that I've been around. So without further ado, to kick it off, I will start in my freshman year of high school. So turning back the clock even a little bit further, I had never had the opportunity to have any sort of like ag class per se before I got to high school. Like my junior high didn't offer anything because it was a fairly small junior high. And elementary school was like, other than like maybe the occasional here, have this little flower that I want you to grow. We didn't really do anything ag related. And so I didn't get to actually have like a structured, well established class until my freshman year of high school. And boy, oh boy, let me tell you, I actually really enjoyed that class. That was probably one of, if not my favorite class all around that I have ever taken. And that includes my college experience as well thus far. My college experience is not over, so there's still time for this to change. But up until this point in my life, I think that ag class is probably my favorite just because of all the different experiences it offered me, and as well as the people I met. I won't discount that class had a lot of people that I'm still friends with to this day that I met there, and they made the class significantly better than it already was. So the class was an intro to plant and animal science class. So it was very basic, general, just all-encompassing agriculture class. And so it was 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, as every high school class ever is. But the caveat to that was on Thursday and Friday, we actually got to get on a bus and go to our school's farm. Or I guess it's a joint farm, but my high school was more prominent than the other high school that we shared it with. We operated it much more significantly than the other high school, but the other high school would be there occasionally. But my school, for my class, I had its second period. I had intro to ag, plant and animal science, second period. So it was nice in the morning, right after math class. And we would hop on a bus. We wouldn't even go to the classroom. We would just go straight to the bus lane, get on the bus, and it was right around the corner. So it wasn't like it was a long bus ride or anything like that. It couldn't be because, I mean, our classes were only like, 55 minutes long, 50 minutes long, something like that. So it was right around the corner. We'd pull in, hop off the bus, take roll, and then there was all kinds of stuff that we did. The marquee thing that I would say that I remember doing at the actual farm that was my favorite was when we were assigned these big outdoor planter boxes. And they were like, I don't even know, probably like 6 or 7 feet by like 3 feet in size, something like that. I'm totally just guessing right now. But generally speaking, they were probably about that big. So they were a good size, and so each we were broken into groups for this. This was part of like one of our grades. This was like a project that we did. We were in charge of our planter boxes, and then we were assigned a plant, some sort of crop, small crop that we were supposed to grow, and every week we were supposed to go out and weed and water and like just maintain our planter boxes basically. So our class, which had probably about 30 people in it, something like that, was broken up into smaller groups of 3 to 4, I would say. Yeah, it was about 3 to 4 people per box. My group had 3 people in it, And then I believe that got whittled down to 2 because I think one of the people either stopped, like moved schools, got moved to a different group. I don't know. But maybe it was just 2 people. I'm going to say it was 2 to 3 people, not 3 to 4. Either way, it doesn't matter. Inconsequential. My partner in our babysitting of the planter box was very good. One of my good friends. And we ended up having so each of the boxes were just left to their own devices in between semesters. So the summer before I got to high school, the previous year's planter box still had their plants in it. And so some people had like overgrown carrot plants, and other people had like overgrown radishes, and some people had a bunch of kale, and like the weeds were growing out of control and all this kind of stuff. So like the boxes looked overgrown. There were a few people who had the misfortune of their planter box being left with an overgrown tomato plant. Actually, several overgrown tomato plants within the planter box. And it just so happens that my planter box was one of those unfortunate people or unfortunate groups who had to deal with removing said extremely overgrown tomato plants. Other people, it took them 15 minutes to just pull out a few weeds, pull out a few overgrown, pick a plant, basically, broccoli, whatever, cabbage. But mine was a multi-day ordeal with the help of other people in my group to extract this massive, overgrown bush of just tomato plant. And so I distinctly remember having to get gloves and like some shears, and we had a rake, but it was like one of those rakes that you use for like super like leaves that fall off the trees in fall. Like it did not do anything to like actually extract what we needed to extract. So anyways, we were taking this massively overgrown plants out of our planter box. And it took us at least, I want to say, 2 class periods to do. So like a full week's worth of being at the farm, it took for us to remove this tomato plant, which I found very, very funny because I was like, it was one of those things where it's like, if it could happen, it would happen. And so once we had gotten it removed and cleaned up, and then we doctored up our planter box as well, we were given some topsoil, some like just whatever generic soil from a bag, to kind of mix in and rework, because all of the soil within the planter box had been sucked dry of nutrients from the plants in it before, especially ours being the massive tomato plants. So I say massive, I'm talking like I'm not a very tall person. I'm about 5'8", 5'9" with shoes on, and it within the planter box was taller than I was by at least half a foot. And so they were substantial. Anyways, we were given this topsoil and we worked it in and made the planter box more viable for planting other plants into it. And so now it came time for us to actually choose what plant we wanted. So now there's a long list of all kinds of different stuff that we could choose from. And obviously the most appealing vegetables, plants, whatever, that were available to grow were things like carrots or broccoli or radishes. There were radishes. I think there was even cabbage. Tomato plants were an option as well. And then all kinds of kale, which kale was like, personally, kale was a very boring option to me, because it was like just a leaf essentially that didn't taste good necessarily. At least with the carrot, when you grew the carrot, you could take it out of the ground, wash it off, and eat it, and it'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. With kale, you're less prone to just plucking it off. Some people are. I'm not. My group wasn't. Most of the kids there, not even most, I would say all of the kids there were not thrilled with the prospect of plucking a leaf off of one of the kale plants and gnawing on it for fun. They'd much rather like give it a go with the carrot, or even for that matter, the cabbage wouldn't be that bad. The radishes were that they wouldn't be too bad either. They're kind of spicy a little bit, but um, either way, the kale was not the crown jewel of the options, and yet that is what we were left with. The tomato plants. That's another one. Tomatoes were awesome because it's just like the little cherry tomatoes, the small ones that you would like see in salad or whatever. They're super cool. I believe that's what they were. I can't. It's been a long time, but they were small enough to where you could just pop them off and eat them, and it was fine. Either way, we were left with Toscano kale as our option because it was we were randomly chosen. So on one of the days that we weren't at the farm, we were actually in the classroom. Our teacher, who was a student teacher at the time, and she was a very good student teacher. She put in like a random name generator or whatever and put all our names in it, and then picked just randomly, drew names essentially. And whenever you got chosen, you got to choose your plant. So we were left with a bunch of kale options, and I just said, you know what? Toscano kale looks cool to me. So that's what we ended up growing. And Toscano kale, for anyone who doesn't know, which I'm sure there's a fair few of people who do not know because kale is kale. To each their own. Not one of my personal favorites, but to each their own. It is very like bumpy and rough looking, and it's like a deep green, and it's kind of bitter. So, and it's much more bitter the like longer you let it grow. So if you don't harvest it soon, or like when it's ready to be harvested, it gets more bitter, which is unfortunate. But anyways, we got kale, and kale seeds are itty bitty. They are tiny little seeds. Like you could fit 5 or 6, maybe even more than that, kale seeds underneath your fingernail, no problem. And so we were given our seeds at one point, and then we had the little tiny individual planter, like I don't want to call them boxes, but like I'm drawing a blank for what the word is. It's like it's like if you were to go to any like Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever and just want a single cup of like a flower, like something like that. It's just a very small little planter box thing, and it has a bunch of, it looks like a grid. And so we planted our kale into that, watered it, left it in the greenhouse at the farm, and as the plants grew and they got bigger, we transplanted them to a little bit bigger of a box, or like a little bit bigger of cups, I guess you could call them, whatever. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank that bad on what those are called. But anyways, transplanted them once, and then they got a little bit bigger and more healthy. And then I can't remember how many we planted to the row. I can't remember if it was 2 rows of 4 or 3 rows of 4 or something like that in the planter boxes. Something of the sort. I want to say it might have been 2 rows, but like I said, it's been a long time. I can't remember. But once we transplanted them from the really small little planter containers to the more medium-sized ones, from there we then put them into our planter boxes, and that's when the growth really exploded and they got to be the size they're supposed to be. And so just over the course of the semester, we were in charge of, like I said, watering, weeding, just maintaining, making sure like gophers weren't inhabiting our boxes or anything like that, and just taking care of our plants. And then at the end, when we were kind of done with this project that we were working on, we were able to reap the rewards of our labor and eat whatever like plant we had. Now, like I said, Toscano kale is not, I mean, to each their own, but for me and all the rest of the kids that were in my class, not the most fun thing to consume. And especially since we actually didn't go to the farm for a couple weeks towards the end of the growing cycle. And so it was past due. They were well past due of being harvested if we were even looking to harvest them. And so they got pretty bitter, which was not ideal. Now, the people with like the carrots and stuff like that, they were munching on those all day long. It was awesome. But we kind of struck out with the kale part. But nonetheless, that was my most fun memory in that class, ag-related memory to that ag class, was taking care of those plants. Because going out to the farm was awesome. And we did other stuff at the farm too. We didn't do anything really with the animals. We went over, they had a bunch of pigs for fair, for like the more advanced classes and like FFA students and students who were like juniors, seniors, whatever. Like it wasn't really a freshman thing to do that kind of stuff. But they had a bunch of pigs out there. They had a few steers as well. So we would go over, just poke our head in, just see, look at them basically. We also, there's a they had a few tractors out there, just normal John Deere mid-sized tractors for like, the one we were introduced to had a bucket on the front and like a mower on the back. And it was an open cab, just run of the mill John Deere. And so we actually had the opportunity to get up on those and pull them forward, just like release the clutch basically and let it go forward and then brake and then reverse it back. And that was a whole big ordeal because all kinds of kids were like freaking out because, oh my gosh, I've never been on a tractor before and all that kind of stuff. And so that was pretty fun to see those kids do that. Meanwhile, kids like me, who have been around that like their entire life, it's like, oh yeah, it's just a tractor, it's not that big of a deal, guys. Like that kind of a thing. But it was good for everyone else. I will say, distinctly remember one of the kids popped the clutch like just fully on out, and it bucked the front end of the tractor up a little bit, and that was quite the sight to see because they started freaking out, and it was very funny. But no harm, no foul. Everyone was fine, but it was very funny to watch. But yeah, I love that class. That class was awesome. On the days we weren't at the farm, we did all kinds of learning and stuff like that in the classroom. It was always really engaging. Like they brought in fair rabbits, which were cool, which were massive. We got to actually hold them, and that was pretty cool. Got taught how to properly hold a rabbit, and those things are big and deceptively heavy too. Got to see a bunch of baby chicks, which was nice. Well, actually, I take that back. We did get to see baby chicks, but I don't know if it was all too nice. Chickens like that, like adolescent meat chickens are kind of like, they kind of freak me out. They don't freak me out, but I feel like the place that I saw them, the pen that they were in, they gave me vibes of just being like dirty animals, if that makes sense. I don't know. It was uneasy, but it was cool to be able to go over and look at them and stuff like that. They had a bunch of guinea pigs as well that we got to see. We went over to our on-site, like on our high school campus, the green room there, or the greenhouse there. And that's where they do like all the horticulture and like succulents and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, just really interesting class. Really, really enjoyed it. Met some really cool people. Had a really fun time. And no 2 days were ever different. Or no 2 days were ever the same. They were always different. So I very much so enjoyed that. Now moving on to my much, much shorter college agriculture experience. I am not a agriculture major at all. I am a business admin I'm a business administration transfer. I'm a business administration major. And so I don't have anything to do with ag necessarily. However, I tutor writing at my college, and in doing so, I have been put into the ag department's building, into their basically like a computer lab kind of a room. And so in doing so, I, by proxy, am around ag all day long, like most of my week. And so it's always very interesting to listen to all these different people going down different ag paths. Like a bunch of people, there's this one guy who's really interested in all things like plants, like corn, trees, vegetables, like smaller vegetables like cabbage, broccoli, that kind of a thing. But he likes all plant stuff, and so he's taken a bunch of like irrigation classes and plant science classes and like all this kind of stuff. And then you have the flip side of the coin. You have the other people who take like also the irrigation classes, but like more welding based stuff and like more ag mechanic type classes. And so it's interesting to just see all the different stuff. One of the other tutors who's also in the ag room with me, is an ag econ tutor. So she does all the like ag econ tutoring, which I think is super, super interesting considering I'm a business major. I've had to take a lot of like econ accounting classes and stuff like that. And so she's very good at what she does. And every time I like overhear her helping students out, I'm like, dang, I remember doing that, but like you're much better at doing that than I am. And so that's kind of cool, as well as another one of the tutors that is over there with me are like, we have 2 vet tech tutors. And so they do all the veterinarian side of like the ag department stuff, which I think is also very interesting because it's just a totally different aspect of agriculture that I feel like may not at its face be recognized as much as it probably should be, because like they do small animals, large animals, all kinds of stuff, everything in between. I found there was one person who came in who was really interested in exotic animals, like being a vet for exotic animals, which I thought was super cool. But yeah, in college, I'm around ag a lot more, but less directly involved, if that makes any sense. In high school, I was more directly involved. I took a couple ag classes, that one being the one I talked about being my most favorite. But yeah, in college, it's more like just being around people who enjoy ag more so, which is very interesting. It keeps me sharp, keeps me reminded of all the stuff that I've experienced in my short tenure on Earth with ag and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's going to have to conclude today's little bonus episode of just me kind of venting out some of my ag experiences from school. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know if you want more of these. I can do more of these like once a month, once every other month, something like that, if you enjoy listening to me talk. I know you guys enjoy listening to Bill talk, and he will be absolutely continuing to talk about all the things regarding ag, much more in a much more professional sense than what I can provide. But I don't know. I just felt like perhaps a more, I guess you could say, raw perspective on ag and my experiences with ag might be enticing to some people to listen to. Either way, please always remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and always stay curious.